I'm getting started on the kitchenette for my camper van, and it's gonna go kind of alongside this wall here by the passenger door. The back of it is gonna go right up against the bed frame, so that the 2x3 on the wall there, that's basically the end of where my bed's gonna be and where the kitchenette's gonna start, and then it's gonna come about to the middle of these doors, and I've got a line marked here. That's the corner of where it's gonna sit. So I like to use SketchUp to draw out like anything that I need to construct that's similar to that. And instead of bringing my laptop out, I just printed it and then went back onto my computer, like with this piece of paper in front of me, and wrote out all the dimensions on there. So it'll be pretty easy for me to cut all those out and assemble it. I'll have a base piece, a top piece, and then supports going in between those two with some other, like a shelf space built in. I'm not gonna do like a whole tutorial on using SketchUp. There's plenty of videos out there though, so I'd recommend kind of tinkering around with it if you're doing something similar, because it is super helpful to help you visualize and like assemble the construction of something. So I'm gonna get all those cut out and then just start screwing them together. As I'm measuring and cutting these, I'm just gonna write the length directly on the board. That way when I have a stack of them and I'm assembling it, I can just look at my my printout and say, oh, okay, I need that piece. There it is, just be able to grab it really quick. Those are all cut out now. So following my kind of, I guess, blueprints here, I'm going to assemble this bottom piece first, and then the top piece, and then attach them with the supports running vertically. And I'll pre-drill all the holes for the screws, just because that makes it so much easier for getting them screwed in, and a lot easier to line them up. It's pretty nice having all these pieces laid out like this. I kind of just did it because it looked good for the camera, but it's super convenient to look at my blueprints and see, oh, that's the length I need. I've got them all right here. I just picked that one up. Good to go. I have that base piece assembled. I'm just gonna fit it in the van real quick, just to make sure it's sitting how I want it to. It shouldn't be a problem because I've measured everything, but just to be sure, got my line there. Perfect. Yeah, that should work great. So now that I have the base done, same thing, but with the top, just get that assembled, and then I can put the those vertical pieces in to tie them together. Nice. I have that frame assembled, and it's not attached to anything. It's not like screwed into the floor or the wall. I just have it sitting here to make sure that, you know, it is gonna fit in the space that I wanted it in. And there is one piece that I still need to cut, and that's the one that's gonna run right here. The reason I didn't attach it before putting it in here was because I wasn't sure about the length of it. It was just hard to get a measurement without having the frame built. I'm not gonna want that right on the flare, but basically I wanted to fill that space because it's gonna be holding up a counter. So if I cut that piece at 21.5, I should be good. I need to get it secured to the ground, make sure it's lined up with the bedpost, so I'll throw that on there, and then also get it tied in to the wall in a couple of spots. That way, I just want to make sure that it's completely secure. there's my front bed support, and I have this sitting right where I want it. So I'm gonna screw it right into the floor through some of like the bottom 2x2s. That's secured down, and if I show you from this side, kind of gives you an idea of what I was thinking as far as like figuring out the space that it would fill. Because if you're only using this one door on the right, there's plenty of space to get in and out, because it's not like in a van where you have a bench right there and you need to climb behind that bench to get to the back. So I think using that space is pretty wise. And this will give you access to have like some storage back here underneath the propane stove. I'm getting a stencil made to be able to cut out my countertop because that back wall, there's a lot of like curves and things on it. It's not straight. So I'm gonna have to cut like a bunch of curves into the countertop so that it matches the wall and fits really nicely. And I don't really have a great way of doing this besides just trial and error. So cutting some, checking the fitment, cutting some more, checking it again. That's fit on there pretty good. So like all these curves I'm gonna have to cut out because I want that counter to fit really nicely there and fill that space. That should be lined up pretty good. I've got that line made and you know, all stenciled out. And I know I should be using a pencil, but I like using pens, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But running out of daylight, let's get that cut out and fit in the van to make sure everything is lined up. That's all cut out, good to go. Definitely some rough edges around there, but it's kind of expected. I'll have to do some sanding and clean the whole thing up. But yeah, I'm out of daylight, so we'll get that dropped in tomorrow and I'll show you how it looks. It's actually been 2 days since the last clip because I had to work on some other things. So let me show you where I'm at right now. I have this whole wall is done, or not like the whole thing, but this section that's like carpeted really nicely. I can't remember the name of this material, but I've used it before in some other builds and I really like it. And the reason I did that was because I didn't want to put the counter up against this wall before I had it finished, because there was some open metal there and like some uneven spots. So I had to kind of build a little bit of a wood frame on top of it and then filled it in with some foam and then trimmed the foam just to make it really smooth, and came out really nicely. So I also trimmed a little bit off of the counter because this corner initially there was like an extra like triangle piece in there. But once I got that wall kind of filled in, because it used to kind of cave in there. But anyways, I got more of a rounded off look to it and then trimmed to the counter. So it's fitting really nicely now. I really like how that's sitting on there. And the next thing I need to do is cut out the holes for the sink. I'm gonna have a sink going right here, and then a cutout for my propane oven, which is gonna go right here. I'm using a square to make sure the counter is sitting right where I want it to sit, because I'm not gonna screw it down yet. I'm just gonna take a pen and mark underneath it, kind of where these supports are hitting. That way I know how far out I need to put the sink from the walls. Hopefully you can see this all right. I have the counter flipped upside down so I can make like markings on it and whatnot. And I've got my sink, and I'm just gonna flip it over and basically line it up where I want it on the counter. And I have to keep in mind that the space that I cut is gonna be a lot smaller than the outside dimensions of the actual sink. So the front, because of where the support sits on the frame underneath, that already pushes me in about 2 3/4 of an inch. So I'll probably just use that same mark to mark the side as well. There's my cutout for the sink. And you can see that's the marking for like where the faucet's gonna go through. So that should be good to go. Now I need to figure out my markings for the oven. And I measured it. It needs to be 15 inches deep and 21 3/8 wide. And I need to be able to center that between those two supports. That mark is good to go now as well. So I'm ready to get those cut out. It took a minute, so I didn't record the whole thing, but I've got that cut out and it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with how it came out. I basically had to use a combination of a circular saw and a jigsaw because the circular saw can't get right in those corners. So I went basically almost up to the corners and then took the jigsaw the rest of the way to get those pieces out. So I need to, I'm just gonna sand the edges just real lightly, just the corners, just to get the loose stuff off, and then get it fitted in the van and drop the sink in there and drop the stove in there. I do have to put like a piece in the kitchenette for the oven to sit on. So I will have to do that first before actually fitting it in there. But yeah, I need to get that wiped down because there's just sawdust all over it. I dropped the sink in just to see how it would fit, and it's looking good. And I also got that the piece cut out for like the, I don't know if you call it a shelf or a platform. But yeah, just cut a square and then cut 1.5 inch squares on each corner so that it would fit in between the 2x2s. So I'll get that screwed in and then get the oven dropped in and see how it fits. So it should fit just fine, but I measured it without taking into consideration the handles because I figured I could just kind of like slide it in there. But I'm gonna have to take those off. It's not perfectly level, but I could always put something under the feet on the bottom to level it out. This opens up and then you have like a stovetop, and that should, oh beautiful. I tried to measure it so that when it opened up it would rest right there, and that's perfect. The next thing I'm gonna do is cut a piece of butcher block to go on this edge right here. So up like tall ways like that. That way it provides a little bit of a barrier between like the sink and the bed. Basically, it'll be attached to the counter just like that. Except I need to figure out that angle to cut it at so it lines up with the wall. I need to get some cardboard, and I'm gonna cut out a stencil so I can match the angle on the wall and then get that marked on the wood and then cut it. This cardboard is the height of my wood, and since this wall is pretty straight, I should be able to just measure the gap on the bottom of this and then trace it onto the top and draw a line from the corner to the mark that I make. So it looks like it's about 1.5 inches. Looks good. This is a curved edge, so I don't know exactly where that's going to sit when I attach it, but looks great. I'm gonna put some wood glue on it and then clamp the whole thing and then put some screws in from the bottom. I don't really know of a better way to do that. I've never actually built a counter like this, but I think it should turn out pretty good. As long as I have it, you know, clamped together and screwed really cleanly, should be good. I've got some clamps, I've got some long screws, and some wood glue. So, put a nice strip of it on there. And get this lined up really nicely. Oh no, my clamps are not long enough. Guess I'll just try and screw it in and keep it straight. Probably should have checked that before I put wood glue on it. Alright, so that cracked the wood just a little bit. Not enough to be noticeable when I pull the screw out, but I'm gonna need to pre-drill that. All right, one down, and I'll show you the split in the wood. See that little crack right there? But I mean, I got the screw in there, so let's get 3 more of them done. I'll do the one on the end first, just to make sure the board is straight, because it's flush right here, but you can see down here it did move a little bit. I'm glad that worked out, even though my clamps did not. But yeah, I'm happy with that. I didn't record this, but I got my butcher block sanded down and oiled. I used 220 grit around these edges just to get like a little bit of a curve on there, and then 80 grit across the whole thing to make it nice and smooth, and then use this butcher block oil and did a couple coats of that. So that's good to go, but I'm working on a couple other things right now. I put in this wall right here to separate the space between the stove and the sink, and I'll also put another piece down here that my water jugs are gonna sit on. But the next thing I'm gonna do, I found this paint additive just online as I was browsing some things, and I'm going to paint the space around where the stove is going to sit. I don't know how much of a difference it'll make, but I think it should help the wood to be able to handle like the heat from the stove. I don't know if that's overkill or if it's, I don't know. I haven't really seen many other people do these. I've seen like one other video, and that other video, the guy, he had built like right around it, and this is obviously way more open because it doesn't have like the walls. It's just gonna have kind of trim on the 2x2s. But yeah, I'm gonna mix that into my paint, get that painted, and then while we're waiting for that to dry, we can get the counter attached and then start doing the face pieces on the kitchenette. This bottle is 8 ounces and it says it's good for 1 gallon of paint. So I'll mix a quarter of it. I think this is a quart, right? But I feel like that's a quart. I could be wrong. But I'm gonna mix 1/4 of it in there because that feels right. It seems thin, which I guess makes sense if we put an additive in paint. So get a coat on there. It says to do 2 coats. So get this covered and show you how it looks. Something good to point out with this that I've just like realized in the last few minutes is if you're going to use the additive, definitely paint your surface first if it's not already painted, and then do like the paint with the additive mixed on top of that, because this is just, it's just like too thin that I'm definitely gonna end up doing more than 2 coats because it's like, it's almost like transparent. So yeah, I'd say definitely paint your surfaces before putting the additive on top of that. I have like 3, maybe 4 coats on some spots. You can see it's super sheer. You can still see like the wood pattern, no problem. But it is coated on there pretty good, so I'm not too worried about it. Since it's on the inside, I'm fine with having like the natural wood look, even though now it does have like that kind of sheerness to it with the coating. But anyways, I'm moving on. Also, I got this this piece down here that the water jugs are gonna sit on. So one for fresh, one for gray. They're gonna sit in there. And then of course the sink on top. So let's get the counter attached.